Hitler thought that the conquest of Norway would be an overnight job. However, in spite of the treacherous attack, it took him 62 days with a loss of more than 60,000 men and 1/3 of his fleet to occupy the country. And Hitler's well-known new order had also arrived in Norway. But Hitler never conquered the Norwegian people. From the ruins grew a new hope for a free Norway. Volunteers constantly arrive at this training center, having been through a hard school before they were even able to enlist. First, the difficulty of escape from Norway, facing the horrors of Gestapo torture and execution if discovered. Compared with these difficulties, even the long journey ahead seemed easy. Many traveled thousands of miles along devious routes, braving hardships and dangers. Thousands escaped across the border to Sweden. Then, by help of Norwegian official channels, they were able to continue through Russia, Siberia, and Japan, and further on Norwegian boats to the east coast of the United States. After Japan started to make difficulties with transit, new routes were taken, mainly through India. Hundreds got caught when the war started in the Near East, but along devious new routes, they still managed to reach the ocean, where in all larger seaports, they found Norwegian ships sailing for the Allies that took them to England or the United States. It took them from months to a year to reach their destination, traveling with all kinds of transportation, not to forget on foot, and going through hundreds of hardships and endless adventures. Still, among the boys in Little Norway, that was considered the easy way. The hard way was escaping across the North Sea. From all along the Norwegian coast, thousands escaped in small fishing boats, eluding German U-boats, mines, and German patrol planes, managing to reach England or the Shetland Islands across the stormy, tumultuous North Sea. Some even crossed the Atlantic in frail crafts that were mere miniatures, even compared with the Viking ships of 1,000 years ago. A crossing of the Atlantic was made in a leaky 32-foot boat. And one man started out alone from Lofoten Island and managed to reach England in a small rowboat, a distance of more than 800 miles. Hundreds upon hundreds of young Norwegians were arriving at the RNAF training camp. More barracks were built. And Little Norway was an appropriate name for the camp on the shores of Lake Ontario at Toronto. It is a 100% Norwegian training center, built and organized by leading officers in the Royal Norwegian Air Force, with funds earned by the Norwegian Merchant Marine. From the same source, the Norwegian government also pays all training expenses, including planes and other equipment. A ferry connects the camp with Island Airport, leased by the Norwegians for their main training field. All training planes are American-built. The bombers and fighters, about $20 million worth, were bought by the Norwegian government before the war, but were delivered too late to be used during the campaign in Norway. Now they make excellent training material. The blue and yellow Fairchild training planes you see here were bought later with funds from the Norwegian Merchant Marine, and some of them with funds contributed by Norwegians or friends of Norway in South America and in the United States. They are used for elementary training. These Douglas attack bombers are used for advanced training. Curtiss fighters, also for advanced training. Northrop patrol bombers, also used in action by Norwegian squadrons overseas. Most of the men, of course, want to become pilots. But in a modern Air Force, at least 10 men are needed on the ground for every one in the air. Ground crews are as important as pilots to the fighting efficiency of the force. They go through extensive training for their many special jobs. The mechanics are trained not only for routine work, but for complete overhaul and repair of the planes. This is a group of fledglings from the elementary training class. Before the student pilots take to the air, they have to spend several weeks in schoolrooms with the theory of aviation. Now the teacher gives them a last demonstration with a model plane before they get the first lesson in the air, practicing takeoffs and landings. A perfect landing. If the student pilot did this himself, well, then he may get the plane alone next time. And the names on these planes indicate that they are gifts bought with funds contributed by Norwegians or friends of Norway in South America or in the United States. Here, Crown Princess Martha of Norway opens the christening ceremony for a number of gift planes. 5-year-old Prince Harald, and he seems to be quite proud of performing his first official act. Princess Ragnhild wants to have a share in it, too. And Princess Astrid. For the plains and on the ground. They get a stiff training and have to spend months in school. Hard work gives good appetites, and the men in the kitchen are doing their bit. Many of the cooks and bakers were previously working on Norwegian whalers and merchant ships that were torpedoed. All bread used in Little Norway is baked in the camp. Flying is a young man's job, but an old man can get a chance to do his bit with the Air Force, too. Here is the oldest man in camp, the shoemaker, more than 60. He's full of good jokes, and he does an excellent job. Mending socks and repairing uniforms for the boys in Little Norway is a voluntary contribution from Norwegian Canadian women. Women's organizations in the United States, mainly Norwegian and Norwegian Americans, have also sent large contributions of socks, mittens, and knitted scarves to the camp. Mail is here. There are no letters from home for the boys in Little Norway, as there is no mail communication with their homeland. However, many correspond with friends in the United States and Canada, and the arrivals of mail and gifts are happy occasions. This is a corner in the library of the camp, housed in the gymnasium which was given to the camp by Friends of Norway in the United States. Our next visit is to Vesli Skaugum, a province of Little Norway, so to speak, situated about 160 miles north of Toronto. This place was bought as a recreation camp, bought with funds from the men's canteen and a special gift from a Norwegian, but the heavy log buildings also accommodate hundreds of soldiers in training. The architecture and workmanship in this building is typically Norwegian. In the winter months, it is used as a recruiting center. Before the recruits are admitted to the special courses, they have to take several weeks' initial training. This includes drilling, learning military routine and discipline. At Vesle Skaugum, they get this initial drilling course and at the same time are trained as ski troops. For a possible winter invasion of Norway, it is of great value that the Air Force be thoroughly familiar with the military aspects of skiing. Through healthy outdoor life, the men get excellent physical training before they start on the special courses. Born skiers, as most of them are, they sometimes participate in ski meets in the United States and Canada when off duty. This is from a ski jump competition in the United States, where some boys from Little Norway went off with all the first prizes. Ski jumping has much in common with aviation. Chances are that men who can fly through the air with wings on their feet, like these boys, will also make good in a plane. In the season of 1942, a young fighter pilot from Little Norway participated in a series of competitions in the United States on a few days' furlough, and he brought back with him to camp the All-American Championship in ski jumping. Here he comes, All-American champ Ola from Little Norway. And I can tell you he operates his fighter plane with equal skill. In the summertime, Vesle Skaugum is used as a recreation center for the men of the Air Force. In the beginning of October 1942, Prince Harald, the future king of Norway, enjoyed his first visit to Vesle Skaugum. Only 5 years old, but look how he handles those oars. Now for a swim. A chilly October morning, frost on the ground. Too cold, he thinks, but if he can do it, I can. So there he goes. A real little Viking he is. In the summer season, the recruits are stationed at Lakeside Home on an island near Toronto. In February 1942, the building of an additional camp started at Muskoka Airport, 120 miles north of Toronto. With great speed, a big hangar, barracks, and mess buildings were erected. And in May 1942, the camp was ready for flyers, and the elementary flying school moved in. Here, Crown Prince Olaf and Crown Princess Martha of Norway arrived for the dedication ceremony. The Crown Prince delivers the dedication speech. Many high officers of the RAF and the RCAF also participated in the ceremony. Here are Air Vice Marshal G.O. Johnson and Air Vice Marshal McCain. When the more formal part of the dedication ceremony was over, the Crown Prince had a chat with the Norwegian architect of the camp and the Norwegian and Finnish Canadian expert workmen. Later, Prince Harald inspected the camp. The mascot of this camp is a brown bear, given to the camp as a tiny cub. And it had to be raised on milk from a bottle, but now it's a Coca-Cola fiend. Hey, what is this thing? Pigs in a training camp? Ah, yes, but they represent an economical way of utilizing scraps, and thrift and economy are watchwords of the Royal Norwegian Air Force. The men know that their training program is paid for with the earnings from the Norwegian Merchant Marine. Hard study is combined with plenty of exercise and plenty of healthy outdoor life. Voluntary commando training in hours off duty is very popular, and so is football and soccer and other games. And it isn't just for play and recreation either. There's a grim purpose behind it all. The boys want to be in the best of shape physically the next time they meet the Germans, the next time they get a chance to pay them back. Canada will always live in the hearts of the Norwegian boys.
Oh, Canada, terre de nos aïeux, ton front est ceint de fleurs glorieux, car ton bras s'est porté l'épée, il s'est porté la croix, ton histoire est une épopée.
Flying colors of Norway. It takes many months of intensive training before the boys are ready for combat overseas. But Norwegian air and ground crews trained at Little Norway have, in steadily increasing numbers, already seen action on different battlefields since the middle of 1941. They are fighting in all Norwegian squadrons, also as individual members of the Royal Air Force. The Norwegian fighter squadrons in Britain have participated in numerous raids on Germany and on different parts of occupied Europe, and they have shown an outstanding fighting efficiency. In the big raid at Dieppe, for instance, they were credited with one of the highest scores of enemy planes brought down by any of the Allied squadrons. The Norwegian fighters represented about 5% of Allied air strength in that fight, but they were officially credited with more than 15% of all the losses inflicted upon the German Air Force. Norwegian patrol bomber units in England and Iceland are operating over Norway and the Atlantic, convoying Norwegian and Allied ships and hunting for German U-boats. Norwegian pilots are also serving in the ferry command all over this world. A convoy bound for Britain. Norwegian freighters and tankers protected by units of the Royal Norwegian Navy. The Norwegian Merchant Marine, fourth largest in the world, has since the beginning of the war carried to Great Britain 50% of its oil and gasoline and 1/3 of its other war necessities. Some of these ships also carry another cargo of special significance. Well-trained lads from Little Norway, boys eager to join the common fight for democracy and for the freedom of their beloved homeland.